I'm a Scouser. We don't get knocked out.
Welcome into the Stokastic MMA strategy show for UFC London. Tyler just make me laugh here right before the show here. UFC London, we just call it the Patty Pimblett show because that's pretty much what this is here on Saturday. Of course, appreciate everyone tuning in here for the strategy show. We are sponsored by Prize Picks. Talk about those props over Prize Picks later on here in the show. Of course, as always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Good afternoon, Pete. How you doing? Matt Snell, baby.
Yeah, what's going on? Crazy card last week, man. And Bill Algeo came through for me big time because I took a significant stand on him, and that was some of the sweatiest money that I've ever made because I was tripping. I was definitely tripping, and I was like, oh my God, triangle. And then when he rolled into mount and he started raining down elbows, I was like, okay, well, it's going to be curtains. And man, Bill Algeo's toughness. And when he got out of that, I said, okay, I think he mentally broke Herbert. But all in all, fantastic weekend and profitable weekend. I hope you guys profited it as well. And we have another amazing card here, early MMA. And I can't wait to see what the fans and what everybody's thinking. And can't wait to, break it down with you.
Man, that was just crazy to see Herbert, who, I mean, obviously, the Burns boys, they're known for their jiu-jitsu. To be able to just battle off that submission was absolutely insane. And, if I'm Matt Snell, I mean, I think you at least give a little thank you, maybe give a little envelope to Jacob Montalvo, say, hey, man, thanks for not stopping that fight. Because there might have been look, we know there are some referees that might have stopped that fight. You could tell Jacob Montalvo is from Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fight should have been stopped multiple times. When you start, doing the robot because your brain shut off for a little bit and couple moments, man. But Schnell with one of the craziest comebacks of all time, and that was a volatile fight, and it seemed like a volatile fight going into it. And as long as you had your exposure correct, man, was it a wild journey.
Yeah, man, that's where you got to use that top fire tool, that ownership over at Stokastic.com. We'll talk about a promo we got going on here later on in the show. But, Pete, let's get right into this main event. Your boy, Tom Aspinall, taking on Curtis Blaydes. And, and by the way, the FanDuel salaries just came out. So we'll talk about FanDuel here on the strategy show. Usually here on the strategy show, FanDuel salaries are not up, but they are out now. So we've got $8,300 for Tom Aspinall on DK, $7,900 for Curtis Blaydes. Over on FanDuel, 20 for Aspinall, 17 for Curtis Blaydes. Early this morning, I was going through my DraftKings app and just kind of create a mock lineup. And one of the things is I don't know how you can avoid the main event because, to me, it's like if you look on the Blaydes side, if he's able to utilize that wrestling game, we know what he can do, racking up points. Aspinall, and you brought up a great point on our betting show earlier this week about the jiu-jitsu aspect of his game, because, I mean, literally there is no jiu-jitsu aspect of Curtis Blaydes' game.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's a big step up in competition for my boy Aspinall, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He recognizes that it's a very difficult matchup, and of all the contenders, it's the most difficult matchup that nobody wants to take. And if he is then able to pull off a victory over Curtis Blaydes, I think it's going to catapult him into stardom even more so. And I wish they didn't do this matchup though. I was really rooting for the Tai Tuivasa fight because I just thought that Aspinall could have his way striking or incorporating some takedowns. But now you're going up against a fantastic wrestler in Curtis Blaydes. So I'm a little worried, but I'm still confident that my guy can do just enough to come away with the victory. And for DraftKings, as Jason just mentioned, it's very difficult to avoid. The salaries are broken, pretty similar to how Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega were last week. It's just at such a sweet spot. $8,300 for Aspinall, $7,900 for Curtis Blaydes. Outside of 6 unbelievable finishes, I would like to think that the salaries in the 5 rounds in the finishing nature of both of these fighters is going to turn into fantasy goodness and points galore. So I would say probably 80% of the time that, one of these fighters are going to be optimal. So a large portion of my lineups are going to include the main event. And it's a lean towards Aspinall because I think he has more ways to win. But as far as exposure wise, it's like a 50-50. Just go completely 50-50 on the fight, get unique elsewhere, and, just enjoy it.
Yeah, now there is a video going across MMA Twitter. The fact of about 10 months ago, Tom Aspinall talked about like he knew at some point he was going to take on Curtis Blaydes, and he admitted he's like, "Look, this is a terrible matchup for me." He knows what it is, but I do favor Aspinall. But I'm with you. I think you got to get to both sides of this fight. I mean, this may be a situation that I might just go into Cruncher. I might just create a group and says, give me one or the other.
Yeah, so that's what I did last week with Ortega and Yair. And, if it went a little bit later, I would have been even better. But because I had so much Yair exposure, it worked out just fine. And I was profitable. I would recommend going to stokastic.fantasycruncher.com, checking out all of our stuff, our articles, our top fighter tool, but also using the Fantasy Cruncher tool where you can create a group and just making sure you get to one of these fighters in the main event. I will touch on quickly that Tom Aspinall back in 2015 fought Stuart Austin, who has gone on and fought in PFL. And he's a pretty talented wrestler and grappler. That is one of the fights in Aspinall's career where he was taken down and controlled on bottom. And he was playing the guard off of his back, which is a recipe for disaster in MMA. Now, that is back in 2015. So we're talking 7 years ago. But I do believe in development, and I do think that he has developed since that time. If he has not developed, then this could be a pretty similar performance that Curtis Blaydes can go out there and replicate. Just not going to finish him via submission. He'll probably look to punish him via ground and pound. But again, I'm siding with development. I know it's unknowns. There's unknowns surrounding Aspinall's cardio. I get it, but I'm going to side with my boy, and I just believe in his prospect going forward.
I mean, look, to me, the biggest question marks heading into this fight on the Aspinall side is, I think, A, it starts off with being able to stop the takedown. And then B, what if this fight gets to the third, fourth, fifth round? What does that gas tank look like? But, if you go back and you think about the fight that Curtis Blaydes had against Alexander Volkov, where he racked up 10 plus takedowns,
14.
But in that fifth round, he was so gassed that he just had nothing left in the tank. So that to me is a question mark as we head to this one. But look, it's a priority fight for me. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuned in for the Strategy Show. Of course, give us a like and subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with all the shows here over at Stokastic.com. Of course, once you subscribe, you got to hit that notification bell so you get that alert when a show goes live here on the channel. Of course, come up here later on today, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We got MLB live before lock for the night slate. And of course, if you're not a Stokastic Plus member, and you want to get a little peek what's behind the paywall, say today's free premium data and tools are MLB player projections, but we do got a little bit more for you. If you want to try out all of our tools for MLB DFS, now you can. We have set our tools and projections for night slates 100% free. So it's a great way to test out what we have to offer if you're on the fence about subscribing. So be sure to check out that. I was watching Josh and Adam right before the show. I was putting in my head-to-head lineups here, getting ready. Got a little baseball here on the side screen as got that Astro stack going on. So definitely pay attention over there. You got to check out all the tools and data we have over there at Stokastic.com. Let's move over to the co-main event, as it is going to be Chris Curtis taking on Jack Hermansson. And this is the A200 8,000 fight on DraftKings. Chris Curtis is the A200 fighter over on FanDuel. $15 for Chris Curtis, $14 for Jack Hermansson. Initially, Darren Till was going to be in the corner of Chris Curtis. However, he decided not to. But I also think that an important part of the process in breaking down this fight, Pete, is the fact of Sean Strickland has been a main training partner for Chris Curtis for some time, and obviously he is very familiar with Jack Hermansson.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, but it's also each fight is unique. I'm sure that there are some tens and some tendencies that you can pick up on, of course. And Chris Curtis has been preparing for the large majority of his career, and especially the past several fights, of sprawl and brawl. And that's his way of performing inside the octagon and picking up bonuses. And, eventually I think his takedown defense is truly going to be tested. And I actually think that Jack Hermansson can test him in ways that other fighters can't, because Hermansson isn't so one-dimensional. Like, if I look at Rodolfo Vieira, I just truly view him as a jiu-jitsu practitioner with not low-level takedowns, but definitely not, wrestling at a high pedigree. So I think Jack Hermansson, with his deceptive takedowns and how he can blend things, and he can strike pretty well. As you know, also I don't think that Hermansson is a walk in the park for Chris Curtis, and I understand that Curtis has so much momentum on his sides. Knocking out Phil Hawes in round 1, Brendan Allen in round 2, and then getting a decision victory over Rodolfo Vieira. Rodolfo Vieira landed more shots than he probably should have against Chris Curtis, and I think that Jack Hermansson can leg kick from the outside, have some volume, and make Chris Curtis a little tentative and look to shoot underneath him. I'm torn on the fight though. Like, I truly am torn because I'm a Chris Curtis backer. I really like him, and I like that. I like his upward trajectory inside the division. And Jack Hermansson hasn't really looked the best of late, but landing 137 significant strikes against Sean Strickland does mean something, and going to a split decision. So I'm going to view this fight as a slight lean towards the underdog, Jack Hermansson. I tend to think that this fight goes the distance. I don't know why I do, but I think Jack Hermansson's durability for the most part is going to check out. Chris Curtis could get taken down, and it could come down to like the third round of who really wants it the most. So 8,200, 8,000 tends to sneak into the optimal lineup more often than not. I'm somewhat neutral, and usually I'm not like this for this salary range, but it's going to be a slight lean towards Jack Hermansson for me. What about you?
It's a slight lean for Chris Curtis because of his striking abilities. Now, look, the thought process on Chris Curtis prior to coming into the UFC was the fighters that were able to have success against him. You have a little problem with that chair again?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, the chair. We gotta bank a tournament to get a nice chair.
I thought of that about 5 minutes ago. I was like, is he sinking again?
Yeah, as I'm talking too. It's just like I'm, walking downstairs, so. Oh, goodness gracious.
But to get back to what our point was, as I see you sinking on camera here, is the thought process of going up against Chris Curtis has been challenge him with the grappling.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously Rodolfo Vieira. And I think that played a lot into of why Rodolfo Vieira had the success that he had, because Chris Curtis, his mindset was thinking this guy has to get me to the ground. Look, I think in terms of, if you tell me it's optimal on one side or the other, I think it's probably more likely it's optimal for Jack Hermansson because of the takedown abilities. Yeah. You have to imagine, like, if you're in the Hermansson camp, that's got to be the mentality of, hey, let's take this matchup to the ground. Let's not try to get into a striking matchup. So I give a slight lean to Chris Curtis, but I think GPPs I might be a little heavier. I haven't done any crunches yet to make lineups.
Yeah,
but I have a feeling for GPPs I might be a little higher on Hermansson than I am on Chris.
Yeah, so I like Chris Curtis and I hope that he wins, but whenever I see Jack Hermansson landing 2 takedowns against Marvin Vettori, granted it's a 5-round fight, I just, there's Marvin Vettori's really, really strong and a pretty damn good wrestler. So I think Chris Curtis has to be on his P's and Q's and just could fight a perfect fight to not get taken down once, because even one takedown can lead to a submission. And on the regional tape, we have seen Curtis struggle. I think that he's developed since then. Mm-hmm. So personally, I'm picking Chris Curtis, but from a value standpoint, 8,000 makes it so much easier to get to a ton more in your lineups. And, I'll be neutral to it. I'm going to get to a ton in this fight.
And something you have to know is the fact that Chris Curtis is really a 70er, not an 85er here. Yeah. And there you could have a little bit of a size difference in this matchup. Let's move on to the next matchup. We got Paddy Pimblett taking on Jordan Leavitt. Of course, this has really been the kind of the talk of the, in terms of the MMA community in this one. Paddy Pimblett, look, I think that this is and I've correlated how he's been match made to way Sean O'Malley's team have match made him up to this point of just finding yourself in the right matchups. I was watching Paddy Pimblett's conversation with me yesterday, and the only concern I have is he being a little too emotional heading this one? Like, look, he should win this fight. If Jordan Leavitt pulls this off, it's to me because Jordan Leavitt is able to make this into a grappling match. You tell me this thing's on the feet, I think we're getting a Paddy Pimblett knockout at some point.
Yeah, somebody's going to knock out Paddy Pimblett, and I don't think it's Jordan Leavitt. Now, he could land something stupid, a spinning back fist, a looping shot, because Paddy Pimblett's chin is going to be exposed, and it's going to be straight up in the air. Jordan Leavitt could literally close his eyes and land a shot against Paddy Pimblett. And, it could be over because we've seen Paddy just get hit so many times, but his toughness is always on display. And I truthfully don't think that Jordan Leavitt's the guy that's going to, as I sink again, I don't think that.
That's not what I'm laughing about.
Okay. I don't think that Jordan Leavitt's the guy that's going to be able to, get a victory and derail the hype train. I think Paddy Pimblett's striking looked ever improved against Luigi Vendramini and picking up a win against Kazula Vargas. Now, Jordan Leavitt could win a round and make a second round extremely close by landing a takedown or stifling the offense of Paddy Pimblett. On the feet, I think Paddy should sprawl and brawl and, make Jordan Leavitt pay for all the stuff that he's been talking about in the media. Both of these guys seem to be a little bit, amped up for this fight, and Paddy more so than anybody. He seems to, be emotional, as you mentioned. And when you're emotional, sometimes you make mistakes. I do think that Paddy's the A side of the fight. Truthfully, not a fight I am just like in love with from a GPP perspective. It's Paddy Pimblett via KO, or this is going to go the distance. I don't foresee either one of these guys submitting one another, truthfully. Jordan Leavitt might be a popular underdog this week because a lot of people are waiting for Paddy to lose. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen in pretty terrible fashion. I just don't think that Jordan Leavitt's the guy to do so. So 8,900, I'll get to Paddy Pimblett. I'll sprinkle Leavitt at 7,300. And I think that this fight might be pretty boring, truthfully. There will be moments when it's exciting, but I could literally see Jordan Leavitt holding on to a single leg or a double leg, refusing to let go, and Paddy making the crowd start to boo. So we'll have to see. Whenever two grapplers tend to match up, it tends to be a striking matchup. But I think Leavitt's going to do everything in his power to not strike with Paddy.
That's why I think the over 8.5 fight time on Prize Picks is a very intriguing play for Paddy Pimblett.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it.
Now, here's the thing. I don't want to make that play right now. I want to wait till Saturday because I think that number's going to come down because of how people play. Now, by the way, the reason I was laughing, not because of your share, is our guy Tyler putting a poll up over in the YouTube chat. Who wins, Paddy the Baddy Pimblett or Jordan Twerk on Leavitt?
That's awesome. I didn't even see that.
Okay, let me ask you this, Pete. How much would someone have to pay you to twerk on your opponent after a win?
I ain't twerking on nobody.
The answer should be
I would totally do the Paddy Pimblett Modern Warfare 2 celebration if somebody upset me enough. So
the funniest part of that is Paddy getting asked during a media day to explain what teabagging is.
He's going to squat up and down as close as he can without getting yelled at by the referee. So I love it.
How does that come up in a press conference? Like, what makes you
they
go?
Want headlines, and they want just, it's an interesting. You have to give it to the reporter for doing it because that it just made for great entertainment.
Obviously, I know questions get asked for clicks, but it's one of those things. If I initially saw on Instagram, I'm like, what world am I living in a press conference that someone is bringing up teabagging? Like, what world am I in?
2022, the strangest past 2 years ever. So, yeah. But, I'm not really enthused. I think that this matchup is just strange. I think Jordan Leavitt is extremely strange. I think that his grappling, he can win minutes from top position. And I worry about Paddy Pimblett searching for some of these bailout, Hail Mary type of submissions like flying triangles and, playing jiu-jitsu off of his back and losing minutes in an MMA fight. So if Jordan Leavitt wins, I honestly could see like a 65, 70 point performance. And I don't think it's going to be optimal given 14 fights and all these finishes that I'm predicting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Of course, if you want to get access to all the great Stokastic Plus tools that we have for nearly every DFS sport out there, you got to sign up for a Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Stokastic.com, including player projections, ownership projections, lineup builder, our Discord channel, and so much more. And if you're a new user of Stokastic Plus, then you can save 50% off your first week of any Stokastic Plus pass. All you got to do is click that link in the video description below to activate the offer, or you can head over to Stokastic.com, use the promo code MMA Strategy Show, all caps, one word. That's MMA Strategy Show for 50% off your first week of any weekly package. Of course, you can use that just for an MMA weekly package. Check that out right now. In terms of our MMA product, I talk about every week as I'm developing my lineups. I love going to that top fire tool because it gives you everything that you need. You want ownership, projections, fight length, all types of tools over there. That is a tool I'm looking at. Of course, that ownership is the tool that I'm really looking at. Of course, about an hour ago, the tools and data were updated over there. So you got to check out that over there as you look at Paddy Pimblett. I mean, look, the ownership to me, I thought it'd be higher than what currently it's sitting at, Pete. I'm really surprised it's not a higher number than what it is right now. So that's something to check out over there at Stokastic.com. Sign up for that MMA weekly pass. Be sure to use that promo code MMA Strategy Show where new users can get 50% off your first week. And of course, we got MMA every week. Next week, we got the Dallas show, the pay-per-view. So great time to join Stokastic.com. Of course, we got all of our LB coverage as well. Let's move over to the next matchup. It's a light heavyweight matchup. Nikita Krylov taking on Alexander Gustafsson. Nikita Krylov 8,600, Gustafsson 7,600 on DraftKings. Over on the FanDuel side of the equation, $17 for Krylov, $13 for Gustafsson. I don't know what to expect out of Alexander Gustafsson. Hasn't fought since 2020. Now he's back at 205 pounds. Nikita Krylov, to me, it's almost like a first 7.5 minutes or bust with him.
Yeah.
If you tell me this thing's hitting the third round, I do like Gustafsson.
Yeah. So, I mean, this week seems like a high variance week where you got a ton of volatile matchups, a couple confident, 9,000 plays that we will get to. But, Krylov has had some momentum and has looked good. And he was dominating against Paul Craig until he ended up getting a little too overconfident and got, caught by Paul Craig's active guard. And it's happened to so many fighters. And Nikita looked great early. And the issue is that Alexander Gustafsson has stepped away from the sport and is looking to hop right back in and get against one of the guys who's been acclimated in the cage. Now, former, championship experience, fighting against John Jones and whatnot. We know that Alexander Gustafsson had potential. And several years ago, he would have walked right through Nikita Krylov. But it's 2022. And outside of being a part of his camp, we don't really know how he's looking. We don't know how serious he is. There are tons of unknowns when you go into fights. You got, fighters with bad weight cuts, as, we had Onama a couple weeks ago, or whoever. Or like there's some fighters that are massively favored that, may not be at their best. And, with all the unknowns here, I'm going to have to side with the guy, Nikita Krylov, who has been acclimated and did look good. And I worry about him getting finished as this goes on. From a betting perspective, I would just much rather target the under 2.5. I don't think that this goes the distance. I think somebody's going to get finished. We have seen Nikita Krylov's fight IQ pop up from time to time. If Alexander Gustafsson is even at 80% of what he used to be, I think that he makes it look pretty good against Nikita Krylov by even landing takedowns. So as far as underdogs, you could do worse than Gus at 7,600. I'm going to target this fight in general, but I'll be picking Nikita Krylov at 8,600 just because of him being inside the octagon more recently.
And Joshua in the chat brings up a great point. If this fight was 4 years ago, Gustafsson's probably a 4-1 betting favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. And the issue is, the time off, and the sport is ever evolving. So if you're not a part of it, or you're not training and you're not being, tested, I don't know. I think that this is a nice spot for Nikita Krylov to pick up a huge victory over a big name fighter in Alexander Gustafsson. And in Gus's past 3 fights, he's been finished, great competition. And I think the resume speaks for itself, losing to John Jones in the 3rd round via a KO TKO, Anthony Smith in the 4th round via rear naked, and 1st round with his experiment against Fabricio Verdum as a heavyweight in round 1. So who the heck knows what's going to happen here? I'm picking Krylov though.
I think I'm going to pick Gustafsson.
Okay. I mean, like as far as for DFS,
it would be my straight up play with Gustafsson. I don't know if he'd be a great DFS score because I'm like you. I think this is going to be a car where we probably need 650 plus points to be optimal.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a sneaky path to victory of him landing takedowns. And, even against John Jones, we saw that he landed takedowns. So he landed 1 of 8 against John Jones. And just being able to mix things up and landing in top position against a guy who has questionable fight IQ. Fight IQ, who has worse? I'd probably say Nikita Krylov's fight IQ is worse. And how when he loses, he tends to gets finished. But I'll be picking Krylov. You'll be picking Gus. And as far as exposure, Gus will be one of my most heavily exposed underdogs.
I mean, look, I don't mind getting to Krylov as a GPP play. I don't think this is a fight. I don't think I would get there in cash. This is more of a GPP play on the Krylov side. Let's move over next. So you got Molly McCann taking on Hannah Goldy, 9,300 for Molly McCann, 6,900 for Hannah Goldy, and then $22 and $9 respectively over on the FanDuel side of the equation. The one thing is, when I look at the Hannah Goldy aspect in this one is how will she handle the volume and pace of Molly McCann?
Well, I'll tell you what, from a stature standpoint, I was pretty blown away of how similar they are. Both 5'4", similar reach, and similar volume. So like Molly McCann brings it and throws 5.83 significant strikes per minute. Hannah Goldy, small sample size, but 6.05 significant strikes per minute. And they both absorb high 4s of significant strikes. So this could be we see competitive, matchups on the feet all the time. And, women's MMA underdogs are always making a case for themselves of getting some exposure. I'm not going to unclick Hannah Goldy just because I think, in women's MMA, crazy things happen, arm bars from guard and competitive fights and just reversals and tons of activity. Molly McCann has more ways to win in this bout, though. Like, she should go right through Hannah Goldy because of her ability to mix things up. She averages 1.79 takedowns per 15 minute. And that's fantastic. I like how she can blend things together. I actually think that she will pay off her price tag there. So, 9,300, really, really hefty price tag. But when you look at her box scores and you see what she's able to do and the pace that she, pushes, there was a time when against Diana Belbita, she shot 14 takedown attempts, landed only 5 of them, and won a decision and scored 109 fantasy points. So I actually think that 100 points is pretty likely for Molly McCann, but I will never, ever, ever unclick women's MMA underdog unless they are absolutely atrocious. And I don't think Hannah Goldy's all that good, but the fact that she can compete on the feet with a high volume striker, I'm going to have to keep her in at least just a little bit.
By the way, Josh, no way in hell would I ever do a shoey bet.
Yeah, no, I know.
If you see me do a shoey, you need to put me in the Uber right now.
Yeah, we'll have to find something unique. Like we can't be doing shoeys.
I'm sorry. That's just disgusting.
Yeah, no. We got to do something unique, and we'll come up with something.
Have you ever tried the old raw egg in the beer? I used to do that in college and tell people it was to keep my protein to carb ratio accurate, and it would really throw people off.
I think I'd rather do a shoey. That's horrible. Goodness gracious. Yeah, that's all
right. You got to do the shoey out of Pete Senior shoe. What do you choose?
I'd probably still do the shoey. I am not putting an egg in a beer. Golly. We'll figure out something though, because I like it when we take stands on opposite fighters, and
look, I'm waiting to be in a bar environment with Tatu Avasa, and I see someone do a shoey. It's going to happen at some point. It is.
Oh, for sure.
But no way am I doing a shoey. No way. That is not happening at all. Let's move over to the next matchup. It's the opening fight of the main card. Light heavyweights, Volkan Oezdemir and Paul Craig. Volkan Oezdemir, 8,500, 7,700 for Paul Craig. And then over on FanDuel, you got $16 for Oezdemir, $13 for Paul Craig. One of the things that is kind of a concern for me in a little bit is Oezdemir, the fact that he's not been training in the United States now for some time. He's had some visa issues. I believe he's done some work there at All Stars. in preparations for this one. I mean, look, Pete, the mentality's got to be, if you're coaching Volkan Oezdemir, if the number one priority is, if he pulls guard, don't fall him to the ground.
Yeah. I mean, stay out of Paul Craig's guard at all costs. I mean, you even saw Nikita Krylov, who was beating up Paul Craig from his guard, fell victim to the dangerous submission attempts that Paul Craig has. And that's the only knock on Craig, is his acceptance of back bottom position, where he's just okay playing off of his back because he will get beat up from time to time. On the feet, he doesn't seem to be the most durable guy. But with all that being said, I do think his striking has improved. And his striking has improved over the years, as evident in the Shogun rematch. The fact that he can chain takedowns or aggressively pursue takedowns, he just needs one. He really just needs one. So as far as paths to victory, I think that he has more paths to victory than Volkan Oezdemir. Oezdemir has high KO upside on this slate, truthfully. Really has high KO upside on this slate. But I think I got to go with my guy, Paul Craig, just as far as underdogs that, always tend to come through for me. I don't love the matchup for him. I think that the momentum is clearly on his side, and he's been absolutely fantastic. And you have Volkan Oezdemir facing tough competition, losing to Yuri Prochazka, and then against Magomed Ankalaev. Prior to that, a win over Alexander Rakic. So the Rakic win has definitely aged well, even though Rakic is out due to injury for quite some time. I'm going to be split exposure on this fight. I'll be rooting for Paul Craig, but I feel like this is an optimal fight. There's no way that I'm not getting to. There's no way that I'm avoiding getting to no time Volkan Oezdemir here. It's just because of Paul Craig's, susceptibility of getting cracked by a shot and wobbled on the feet, man. So he was knocked down against Khalil Roundtree, knocked out against Tyson Pedro. It could happen again, but man, the momentum is too strong to avoid. So I'll be siding with Paul Craig.
One of the things of looking at that top fire tool and looking at ownership, the fact of, in terms of overall fight ownership, this is what sticks out to me. The fact of, it's not one of your more higher owned fights. And to me, this has got GPP written all over, because you know what Paul Craig can do if the matchup gets to the ground. Of course, we know what Volkan Oezdemir can do on the feet. To me, it's got to be a fight that you definitely look at in terms of building your GPP lineups. Of course, this is the Stokastic.com MMA strategy show, and we are sponsored by Prize Picks. They got their daily prop-based contest. Of course, be sure to use that promo code AWESOMO for $100 instant first match deposit. So deposit $100, they give you $100. If you only want to deposit $20, they give you $20. Of course, they got no sharks, optimizer, or mass entries. 5-player lines can net you up to 10 times your entry fee. Of course, use the knowledge you have on multiple source with cross sports entries. Of course, click that link in the video description below to head to prizepicks.com or download their app in the App Store or Google Play. And there was definitely some props, Pete, that stuck out to me today. Fight time, Tom Aspinall, 15 minutes. I think this is an underplay.
I do think it's under as well. There are question marks surrounding both guys, and I'm not sure it's going to reach the championship rounds. Tom Aspinall hasn't really been in the second round that often, never mind the third, never mind beyond that. So I'm going to say under.
As I look over at the fantasy scores, the Paddy Pimblett one is interesting to me at 96.5. And something you got to note is a first round finish is worth 100 points. I'm tempted to play the over in that one. I think if you're going to play the over, I think you need to get it on it now, because I think as time goes on over the next 24 hours, that number is going to skyrocket. But that's one of the ones that I'm looking at. I'm also, the under 9.5 on Nikita Krylov is another one that sticks out to me.
See, I got to be honest. For me, my least favorite part is the fantasy score, just of how difficult it can be at times. I'd much rather target the fight times, the takedown props, the significant strikes. I think there's better ways, and you seem to have more of an edge when you do so like that. Mm-hmm. You need a lot to go right in predicting the rounds, the method, and the score. Especially on the Prize Picks platform, which I think it's just cool that you can bet on takedowns and significant strikes, whereas, like, you know what I mean? It's different that way. So I'd much rather be looking at the unders of the time, and it's such an edge when you can do so.
Mention about those takedowns. Jack Hermansson 1.5.
That's tough. That's tough. I think that it's an overplay.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah. I mean, you can get so unique with this. I can't put up my prize picks right now, but I do know that there are some fantastic lines out there. So always be wise to the takedowns.
And I always say you have to, when you see a number on a Thursday you really like, you got to jump on these numbers now. Like, I will tell you this, if you're looking at maybe getting some better numbers on Paddy Pimblett, maybe you want to make an underplay on Paddy Pimblett, I would just wait.
Yeah. So
because those numbers are going to skyrocket.
Right. I think, like, looking at what I can see from Tyler's screen right now, the over 2 takedowns from Mark Diakiese makes a ton of sense. The over 1.5 takedowns from Molly McCann makes a ton of sense. Those are ones that I would look to target.
Let's move on to the next matchup. We got Mason Jones taking on Klein here. 9,200 for Jones, 7,000 for Klein, $21 on FanDuel for Mason Jones, $10 for Klein. Pete, what's your take?
You ready for this? Mason Jones might be my favorite fighter on the entire slate.
Oh God, I thought you were gonna go the other way, and I was about to go grab a drink and be like, "Oh Jesus, I need to get a drink." And Pete's already.
No. So, like, I try not to. You guys know I check the betting market second to last and the DraftKings salaries last. So I figured he was going to be a massive favorite. Sometimes when I take stands on certain fighters, they're in that high 8,000, 8,600 and up range. The fact that Mason Jones has a 9,200 price tag on him doesn't scare me away because I honestly think it's warranted. Now, I've been doing a lot of deep research on Mason Jones and just kind of like through social media and all of that. He's actually been fully preparing to fight on this card. Even though it's a short notice acceptance, he's been fully prepared to get this opportunity. And he seemed in the media day, he seemed to be like a man on a mission where he was a dominant champion regionally. And then had that banger of a fight against Mike Davis, one of the best fights that you can go back and watch. And Mike Davis is so skilled. So he scored 56 points in that loss. And that lit a fire because he went out there and he put on a hell of a performance, hell of 2 rounds against Alan Patrick, and was on his way to extremely surpassing 100 points. And then an unfortunate eye poke, I believe it was, ended that bout. David Onama, who has turned out to be a fantastic fighter in his own right, he was able to put together tons of combinations and land 8 of 14 takedowns. My love for Mason Jones on this slate is his versatility and how he can mix things up. So the pressure that he's going to put on Leavitt Klein, I think, is going to be massive. And, when Leavitt Klein is starting to get comfortable in the striking, I think that we'll see Mason Jones change levels, initiate the grappling, and look to beat him up there as well. So this is a guy that checks all the boxes for me. He's a little hittable at times, and that is my one worry of Leavitt Klein landing a massive shot. But the pressure, the preparation, and the skill all seem to check out. I'm going to be massively overexposed to Mason Jones. And as every week, if the person I'm planting my flag on does not come through, then it's not going to be a good night for me. But I'm a big Mason Jones backer this week.
Yeah, it's I think it's a good spot here for Mason Jones. For a second there, I was like, hold on, is Pete about to throw me a curveball? Sometimes I gotta wonder about that. Yeah. Let's move over. Next up, we got Damir Hadzovic taking on Mark Diakiese. Diakiese 9,100, 7,100 for Hadzovic, 21 for Mark on FanDuel, $9 for Hadzovic. And the last fight with Mark, we really saw the fact of him going and showing his overall mixed martial arts game for a long time, but just been known as a striker. But the last time out, man, he went down. He went to Takedown City. He was driving that bus to Takedown City last time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Holy moly. And he needed to do that against Vyacheslav Borshev, Slavaklaus, because Slavaklaus is a fantastic striker. And, the knock on him has been defending takedowns. He's able to defend a few and get back to his feet. But little did he know that Mark Diakiese was going to chain wrestle him consistently. He went 11 of 18 in the takedown department, which absolutely shattered the slate. He scored 118 fantasy points, and he was only priced at 7,500. So now he's priced up at 9,100. I think that there's a similar path to victory here. I just worry if he imposes the same game plan. I think that he can mix it up against Hadzovic, but Hadzovic might have some moments because he's a talented striker with pretty lacking takedown defense. He defended 7 takedowns against Christos Giagos and 6 takedowns against Alan Patrick. Against Alan Patrick, he still lost that fight because he was taken down several times. So the better minute winner, in my opinion, is Mark Diakiese. I'm still going to have some exposure to Hadzovic because of his high volume striking. If he is able to, lure Mark Diakiese into a brawl and keep it on the feet, or even knock him out. But I'm going to be picking Mark Diakiese here at 9,100. I think he's a fine play.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Next up, we'll move on to a featherweight matchup. You got Nathaniel Wood taking on Charles Rosa. Nathaniel Wood, 9,400, 6,800 for Charles Rosa, $23 for Wood, $8 for Rosa. Of course, Nathaniel Wood, first fight in 2 years, stepping up in weight, coming from bantamweight to the featherweight division in this one. Of course, we all know about Charles Rosa. I spoke to Charles Rosa probably about 3 weeks ago at this point. The big thing with him is he's made some changes. Most notably not training at American Top Team anymore. He does his morning sparring at Killcliff FC, formerly known as Sanford MMA. I see you shake your head over there.
That pisses me off every time I hear it.
He is still working with his longtime coach and was his manager at one point, Charles McCarthy. And the thing that he sat there, he said to me, he goes, when I was on ATT, Mike Brown would just ridicule me of just the fact of you can't play jiu-jitsu off your back and win rounds. Unless you're submitting the guy, you can't win it. And he said that part of this training camp has been the fact of every time he finds himself on his back, he owed his coach $100. Every time he was in top position, he got $100. There's some motivation for you.
Damn, or he might be broke, because I tell you what, of how he has been inside the octagon, goodness gracious, he's been on his back quite some time. And obviously it's great that he's making changes, because fighters are going to develop over time, and they're also going to try to change and correct their mistakes. And I'm sad that it took him this long to realize that being on your back and will, lose you some MMA fights. He's been dominated in the wrestling department because he's comfortable for fishing for submissions. Now, I do think that Nathaniel Wood can take him down. I think that Nathaniel Wood might actually be a more natural featherweight than a bantamweight because he's starting to get older. So there's striking upside to Nathaniel Wood. And guess what? If Charles Rosa is working on getting back to his feet, that could lead to more takedowns for Nathaniel Wood. So maybe Nathaniel can take him to Takedown City. I'm not a big Rosa backer this week, 6,800. He has Hail Mary submission attempts, and he's been put in tons of bad positions, even on the regional scene, and his active guard has bailed him out. I have Nathaniel Wood. I view him in such high regard, but I do think that this line is kind of getting out of whack, if you want me to be honest. I think it should be more like a 250, not where it is right now. So 9,400, rich price tag, multiple paths to victory, in my opinion. But I'm thinking it's going to go late, and it's going to be a dominant decision for Nathaniel Wood.
And a comment in the section brings up the point, the fact that Charles Rosa does not have a win in the UFC against someone who is currently in the UFC. I mean, it's one of these things of, I want to see what these two guys look like during the ceremonial weigh-ins when they stare down. I want to see if we see a noticeable size difference between the two, with Wood coming up to 45.
I mean, we could, right? We could. I just still think from a volume aspect, like even if it remains on the feet, you have Rosa who will switch stances. I just don't think that he can keep up with the volume and pace of Nathaniel Wood. And 6 strikes per minute for Nathaniel Wood, small sample size, 3 for Charles Rosa. So it's Nathaniel Wood. I think he's a fine play.
Now let's move on to the next matchup. You got Jonathan Pearce taking on McCann, Amirkhani 7,500. JSP, he's 8,700 on DraftKings. Over on the FanDuel side of the equation, $18 for JSP, $12 for Amirkhani. Pete, what's your take?
My take is that McCann Amirkhani is one of the underdogs on the slate that has some of the best round one odds. And that's how I like to build lineups, as well as putting my finger on which underdogs, if they were to win, have a path to victory inside rounds 1 and 2, because that's how you break a slate. Getting an underdog to squeak out a decision and get you 60, 70 points isn't necessarily optimal all the time, but finding underdogs that, if they win, can win inside the distance is my way of developing lineups. And McCann Amirkhani has some of the best submission skills for this division, and pretty sneaky because his anaconda choke, he lures his opponents into it, as evidenced in the Mike Rundy fight, the Danny Henry fight, the Chris Fishgold fight, the Masio Fullen fight. So like he's able to attack the head and arm quite easily. And if there's anything from Jonathan Pearce that, that was negative, was against Christian Rodriguez, who stepped up on relative short notice and consistently put himself in poor positions. He's a good wrestler, definitely a good wrestler. Went 6 of 10 in the takedown department, 6 of 11 prior to that against Omar Morales. But his fight IQ and submission IQ was non-existent, because it looked like Christian Rodriguez was on his way to spoiling the fight for Jonathan Pearce. Like, he was gurgling in a guillotine several times. And his chin didn't look all that great as the fight went long. So it's a McCann Amirkhani play for me at 7,500. I think that he can test Jonathan Pearce, despite the cardio issues that are surrounding McCann Amirkhani throughout his UFC tenure. I feel like they're pretty even with Jonathan Pearce. So I'll be siding with McCann Amirkhani at 7,500, just because I think that there's upside. But this is a matchup where I can see the winner of it getting massive points.
Move on. Next matchup, got Muhammad Mokaev taking on Charles Johnson. Mokaev, 9,500. 6,700 for Johnson, $22 for Mokaev. Over on FanDuel, $8 for Johnson. Obviously, Mokaev, very talented prospect that a lot of people are high on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kid's good. I think he's nasty. I will tell you that flyweights are relatively competitive, and with such a high activity type of weight class, you can have some competitive matchups, and finishes for the long time were not so common in the flyweight division. So that's where Muhammad Mokaev's debut was like extremely impressive, because he opens as a massive favorite over Cody Durden, and he lands a flying knee and follows it up with a beautiful guillotine choke and a little modified choke, and gets him out of there relatively quickly, landing 126 fantasy points. My issue here is just the unknowns surrounding Mokaev. And I'm a big prospect guy. You guys know that I love prospects, and I put my stamp on certain fighters, and Romanov and Hamza and Aspinall are just a few, and Manon Fiorot. So I'm not sold on Mokaev. Like, I think he's nasty, and I think his wrestling's really, really good, and he should win this fight. If he had a low-level opponent, it should be a smash all day for Mokaev, because he has so much upside, especially even at 9,500. But against Charles Johnson, a guy, LFA former champ, pretty good striking experience as the fight goes late. I think Charles Johnson's going to get taken down several times. But one thing that's pretty sneaky is Charles Johnson has prepared for this fight by training with Jordan Burroughs. That can go a long way. I still think that he's going to lose this fight, but I'll be sprinkling Charles Johnson in as the ultimate dart throw.
Now, the next two matchups are both matchups that feature one fighter with a significant reach advantage. In this first matchup, you got a 6-inch reach advantage for Jai Herbert, as he is taking on Kyle Nelson. Jai Herbert, he has 9,000. Kyle Nelson, 7,200. Over on the FanDuel side of the equation, $20 for Herbert and $11 for Nelson.
It will be very sad if Jai Herbert gets knocked out by Kyle Nelson. Now, it's extremely live. I think Nelson's a live underdog because he throws heat and he's aggressive early on. And Jai Herbert's durability has not checked out throughout a lot of his career. And when he loses in spectacular fashion, pretty bad. Like Francisco Trinaldo knocked him out really, really bad, despite looking good early. Ilia Topuria knocked him out in the second round. But guess what? He had Ilia Topuria knocked down because of a head kick, and he looked like he was on his way to upsetting him. So the skills are there for Jai Herbert. I think skills-wise, he is extremely and far superior to Kyle Nelson. It's just, does he get hit with a shot, even if he's picking apart Kyle Nelson, and then his durability just can't hold up. So this is a volatile matchup. I think Herbert wins this fight more often than not. I'm siding with Herbert. I think it's going to be an action-packed fight, but Kyle Nelson, one of the most live dogs on the slate.
Then the other matchup has got a sizable reach advantage for one fighter, and this one is 7 inches. Amanda Bohm taking on Victoria Leonardo. Leonardo 7,800. Mandy is 8,400, and then over on FanDuel, $15 for Mandy, $14 for Victoria.
Really not the most excited about this matchup, if you want me to be honest. I think it's going to go the distance. I wasn't impressed with Mandy Bohm in her debut against Ariane Lipski. She threw 108 significant strikes, landed only 36, attempted 4 takedowns, had relatively no control time at all, looked a little lost out there. Victoria Leonardo, if you go back and you check out her resume, she's fought the tougher competition. She may have lost to a lot of it, but at least she's been in there with some top talent that will test her. So I think it's a lean towards Victoria Leonardo, and I hate it because it just seems like the ugliest fight ever. But we know that women MMA underdogs sneak their way into, contending for the fight or trying to squeak out a close decision. I think the same can happen here. She's fought Miranda Maverick twice, Erin Blanchfield, Manon Fiorot, Melissa Gatto. I'm going to side with Victoria Leonardo, but really, really low level confidence on this pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the opening fight of the night will be Nicholas Dalby taking on Claudio Silva, 8,800 for Nicholas Dalby, 7,400 for Silva, and then 19 for Dalby on FanDuel, $16 for Silva. We had the comment in the chat last week. What was it? 49% of the fights this year, or have the first fight of the night has been optimal. So it's always a fight we got to look at. But I just don't know if I want to trust Nicholas Dalby.
I don't know. I think the odds are a little too wide. And that's where I'm leaning slightly towards Claudio Silva, despite him looking horrible in his past 2 fights against Court McGee and James Krause. The issue here is just the consistency for both fighters. And, Father Time is undefeated, and Claudio Silva in 2022 is not the same fighter he used to be back in 2014 when he looked really good. Even in 2018 and 2019, when he got victories over Nordine Taleb and Danny Roberts. I did like what I saw from his social media posts, training an American Top Team. That they're going to have him prepared, especially with Steve Mako in the wrestling department and all the striking coaches there as well. And I actually thought that his striking looked improved. It's his cardio that is horrendous. So I view Mandy Bohm, Victoria Leonardo, and Claudio Silva, Nicholas Dalby almost the same, like low level confidence with this fight. I would like to think that prime Dalby knocks out prime Claudio Silva, but Dalby has not really had the most UFC success at all. And Dalby has actually been knocked down so many times in his UFC career, once against Darren Till, Zach Cummings, Peter Sabata, who's a grappler, and Jesse Ronson, who ended up following it up with a rear naked choke. So it's a lean towards the underdog, Claudio Silva, more paths to victory, but I hate the fight. I hate the pick. It's just because of, I think this should be like the 7,700, 8,500 type of fight. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems too wide.
Before we get into our straight up fight picks, do want to let you know, head over to the Odd Shopper YouTube channel to check out this week's episode of Takedown City, as myself and Pete break down the betting slate for UFC London. Also, Bellator 283. And of course, we're giving away a free week of our betting subscription over on that Odd Shopper video. So all you got to do is leave a correct pick in the chat. Be sure to check that out over there on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel, as of course you can see it right there on the screen, and check out myself and Pete over there. Loving that thumbnail.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm saying, oh my God.
Even though my wife goes, they do realize your head is way bigger than Pete's. I go, yes. I said, honey, yes. Me and Pete, sometimes I might tell Pete before we start recording, hey man, can you move your camera down a little bit so my head doesn't look just like gigantic next to yours?
No amount of editing can shrink the size of Jason's head. Unfortunately,
I got a big dome, man.
We all wish.
So now all the listeners know like the dirty dark secret about Jason. I don't know if you saw this.
Dude, they see this face. They know I got a big dome.
Do you see Sam's over under? Appreciate the super chat, Sam, and everybody out there tuning into our show. We truly appreciate you guys. You guys are the best. If you can hit that like button, get us to 150 likes. It does a lot for the channel, and it lets Stokastic know that you enjoy our material. So really, it really helps.
Samuel, boy, are you getting into the liquor a little early today?
I think he's been on a bender past 3 weeks.
9.5?
I'm saying under.
Who would say over?
Sam. Oh God.
I mean, look, like if you told me the number was 7.5, I think that point is interesting potential overplay. But 9.5, yeah, Sam, come on, man.
Wasn't it? Didn't he say 2.5 last week? I
think he did, yeah.
Just when he's like some of my students. I can't compliment them, then they perform worse. So I just gotta make fun of him, and then his numbers are gonna kind of get back on track.
Let's get our straight up picks before we get the Sam super chat here.
All right, let's do it.
Main event. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be on the same page here with Tom Aspinall.
Rooting for Aspinall.
I will go Chris Curtis in the co-main event.
I'm gonna go Hermansson.
Paddy Pimblett.
Paddy.
Gustafsson.
Krylov.
McCann. Craig.
Ooh, I'm surprised you did that. Craig.
Jones.
Mason Jones.
Diakiese. Wood. Pearce.
Ooh, okay. Amirkhani.
Mokaev. Herbert. Mandy.
Leonardo. I tell you, this is a volatile card.
Dalby.
Silva.
Volatility there. Top 2 cash. We'll start with Samuel's super chat here. Top 2 cash for me.
Well,
Mason Jones.
Okay.
Oh man, who would be my number 2? Paddy Pimblett.
Okay, I'm going to say main event has to be 1A and 1B, whether you're getting to Aspinall or you're getting to Curtis Blaydes. Too cheap, 5 rounds. I'm going to say Mason Jones is going to be a cash play for me.
Top 2 GPPs for me, I will say Tom Aspinall and I might say Diakiese.
Okay, I'm gonna go Mason Jones. Big on Mason Jones this week, and I will actually go with Jai Herbert because understand the volatility, but I think that he can knock him out, pick up a 100+ win.
In terms of MVP, if he wasn't $23, Nathaniel Wood could be an interesting MVP candidate just because of potentially, maybe he scores takedown after takedown and racks up some points there. Looking at some other MVP, I would look at someone. I'd probably look at. I think I gotta look at the main event.
Yeah,
either that smaller Blaydes.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to.
To me, in terms of underdogs, in terms of GPPs, my top one would be Paul Craig.
I'm gonna go with Amirkhani. I think it's gonna be a weird week. We had 4 underdogs making it to the optimal lineup last week, at least 3.
Well, yeah, we had 6 underdogs win up straight up.
Yeah,
we'll say
so it was Dog City, and I think that the dogs are barking as well this week, and it's going to be some interesting matchups, man.
Favorite inside the distance.
Great question.
I think it's a Craig Oezdemir fight.
I'm going to say Tom Aspinall personally.
Yeah. Top optimal play. I mean,
that's really hard to.
I mean, like there's fights I look at. I think the main event you got to look at because I mean, both of them have just how they win the fight. I would say they're either one, whoever wins is optimal.
Yeah. So for me, main event seems like it's going to be optimal. Herbert Nelson's a one where I'm going to be getting a ton of exposure as well. And Volkan Oezdemir and Paul Craig, like those three seem to really stick out to me.
Top leverage play. To me right now, it's the Oezdemir Craig fight as both of them are getting fairly low ownership.
Okay. Yeah. I'm probably going to be more than that.
Top dart plays.
Charles Johnson. Complete draw.
That was the name that was kind of my mind there too. Also, Samuel's got a super chat. He goes, Pete, how do you set up your groups? Do you fill it in for 6 spots or leave one out? Love the thumbnail, guys.
How do I set up my groups? Do I fill it up for all No, I don't do that. I want to make sure that I'm not constricting Fantasy Cruncher too much, because if I'm constricting it too much, then I'm kind of putting all of my eggs in, centralizing my focus. And this is a random game. So that's where you need randomness to come into play as well. I like to target, say there's 3 fights, like those 3 fights I just mentioned. I will probably put all 6 of those fighters in a group on stokastic.fantasycruncher.com and ask Cruncher to give me at least 2 of those 6 fighters. And then I will differentiate by getting to randomness and leaving salary on the table and whatnot. But great question, Sam.
Yeah, leaving salary on the table is always a good idea there. Of course, appreciate everyone tuning in here for the Stokastic.com MMA strategy show. We'll be back on Saturday morning for Live Before Lock, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So we will appreciate you tuning in here on Saturday. Of course, if you're watching the show after the fact, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you're listening to it on the podcast, leave that rating or review. That really does help us a lot as well. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Prize Picks, and we will talk to you on Saturday for Live Before Lock. Have a good afternoon, everybody.